Hello, everyone. Welcome to Progress Junior Golf with Content Live Golf. My name's Steve Jackson, and this is Ian Waterhouse.
Hello, Steve Jackson. Hello, everybody. Welcome to back to our usual Wednesday night slot now, Steve.
Absolutely, yes. So we haven't done one for a little while, so we thought we'd do one today. Now, this podcast is all about junior golf. It's about the next generation of golfers. It's about getting more boys and girls playing the game of golf. This is show number 17. And we're going to be looking at the power base within the golf industry. And we're going to look at the professional side of it. And we'll also look at the amateur side of it as well. So we'll be talking live golf, PGA Tour. Obviously, that's a massive news story in recent weeks and months. The DP World Tour, LPGA, Ladies European Tour, all the major championships, some of the other tours as well. Because when we do these podcasts here, we talk a lot about building up that base to try and get as many juniors into the game. And obviously that is massively important, the fact that we try and get as many players in the game, of course, as possible. And that will filter through eventually to get to the top. But it's also important to talk about the top of the game, isn't it? And make sure that that is right. And that can influence and try and attract people to play the game. So it's important that we do look at this subject, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's very, very relevant, Steve. We're both actually involved in multiple sports, aren't we? I'm heavily involved in motorsport. I'm involved in football at a non-league level. I'm involved in rugby and handball at the elite level too. And one thing you see in every single sport, it's always the same. It doesn't matter what discipline, it doesn't matter what it is, and it doesn't matter where in the world it is. What happens at the top influences what happens further down the pyramid as you get. And that goes all the way down to the junior level at the minute. Now, golf is going through a major shift change at the minute. We'll touch on this a little bit more, of course, but it's going through a major shift change. So that's going to affect juniors in the longer term. Our perception as we were growing up was if you wanted to be a pro golfer, you had to play European Tour, PGA Tour. That was it. Now there's different parameters. There's other things coming in and the landscape is changing. So what does it mean for juniors going forward? And that's what we're going to touch on tonight.
And not just for boys as well, boys and girls as well, because it's
100%.
Even in the women's game, there's been a lot more money pumped in recent years. Well, that pales into significance compared to what's been pumped into the men's game, even in the last few months or so. So things which we're going to be talking about, though. So massive subject to cover today. First things first, though, let's cover the latest golf news. Then it has been a few weeks since we did chat about things. We'll start with the biggest two tournaments. Then the Boys Amateur Championship that took place at Carnoustie Golf Club. Albert Hansen came from 3 down the 8 to play to win that. Beat his Swedish teammate. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his full name.
Try.
I'll go with the surname Bengtsson. He won 2-1 in the final. So well done, Tim.
Give you a 5 out of 10 for that.
That's good for me. So follows in the footsteps of the likes of Matt Fitzpatrick, Sergio Garcia, and Jose Maria Ladabal. So some big names on that trophy. So really well done, Tim. When I say he's a Swedish teammate, I think he even went to the same school together. So wow, that must be some kind of school which develops golfers over in Sweden. Girls Amateur Championship then. We've got a big mention for this because we're hoping to have a bit of a chat with her and actually do a podcast with her this evening, but she's been quite busy, shall we say, and that's Lottie Woad, and for a very good reason as well, because she won the amateur championship at Carnoustie, beats Spanish ladies amateur champion Fernandez Garcia Poggio 7-6 in the 36-hole final.
And that what a win.
Yeah, I mean, just describe it, Ian, because it wasn't just a 7-6 win. I mean, how many under par was she? Something silly, wasn't it?
I'm not sure what she was under par in total, but I was tuning into the R&A coverage throughout. I was actually doing motorsport that weekend, so I couldn't put my full attention into it. But I kept tuning in every now and again. And I remember earlier in the year, I did the Sunningdale foursomes when she was playing with Rachel Gawley. And there's something about Lottie that you can just see it in her eyes. And she's a machine. You can't beat her. She just it goes in. And do you know, funny thing is, she didn't even know she'd won when she put that putt, and she didn't realise it was the winning putt. Same thing happened at Sunningdale. They didn't realise they'd won. That's how laser focused she is, and she has no idea what the score is. She just knows what she needs to get done. She just starts every new hole as if they're level, and everyone is, I've just got to win this hole. That's all that matters. And she did. It was incredible, absolutely incredible. She is going to be. I've been around a lot of golfers in my time. I don't want to put too much pressure on her, of course. She's still very young and only just gone off to the US, of course. But from what I've seen so far, I've never seen anybody better.
So just to give you an idea of the things that she did in this tournament, there's a stroke play qualifying. She made it through to the match play stages. First round, she won by 2 holes. How about this for scores after that? Second round, 4 and 3. Next round, 2 and 1. Quarterfinals, it's supposed to be getting harder, isn't it? 6 and 4. Next round, semi-finals against Rachel Gawley, of course, a very good friend as well. And as you mentioned there, Sunningdale Forson's partner, 5 and 4 in the semi-finals, and then 7 and 6 in the finals. So some fantastic scoring there. I think she was something like 10 or 11 under par for the actual final. So something pretty exceptional there. And on the back of that, so she secures, even easy for me to say, exemptions to the Women's Amateur Championship, the US Girls Junior, the AIG Women's Open Final qualifying, and this will be a big one as well, the Augusta National Women's Amateur Championship next April. So fingers crossed, hopefully she can actually make it through and play at Augusta, which will be something pretty special.
I would back her to do that. One of the reasons why we're not able to get her on as well is because currently she is here in France right now. It's the Women's Team Amateur Championships, isn't it? Representing England, of course. There she is on the left. So good luck to England.
Now, other events which have been taking place then in recent days and weeks, actually just finished today, Fowler Series at Brocket Hall. Winner, Langland Bay golfers, Joe Jones, 69 shot in the first round, 75 in the second round, and then finished with a 67. So fantastic way of finishing. He won by 1 shot from Teddy Hall from Gog McGog, and Carter Rowe finished in 3rd place in that tournament then. So Fowler Series have also got some events coming up. They've got an under 12s competition, which is a first for the Fowler Series. That takes place at Mottram Hall on Monday. They've got the Welsh Championship as well, taking place on, I think, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday this week. And then that will wrap it up, and then there will be a grand final later in the year. So something to look forward to there. Right, English Women's Open Stroke Play Championship. That took place at Beau d'Azur. I know we're probably talking about juniors, but can we count a 20-year-old as a junior?
Well, yeah, because I'm 37.
We're talking about the Fowler.
So anything under 35 is a junior.
Good point, well made. Yes. Alessio Nobilio, sorry, from Italy. She won in a playoff. She beat Christina Thorber, and they've both finished on 7 over par after 4 rounds. The Reed Trophy that took place at Lincoln Golf Club. Once again, overseas winners. So some very good players from coming overseas playing in some of these big competitions. Adrian Rodriguez Burgos from Spain. He won with a level par score, 73-72, and then finished with a 68. He beat Charlie Rusbridge from Colne Valley by a single shot. In 4th place in that was actually Cameron Mukherjee, who'd done well in previous events. Actually, him and his brothers have done really well in recent weeks up in Scotland. Cole Self finished in 6th place there. I mentioned him because he also did very well in the North of England Under-16 Championship. He actually won the Under-14s prize in that with a 2 under par score. The winner of that competition was Surrey Junior James Brash, which played at Heswell Golf Club. He won with scores of 70, 72, 74, and then finished with a 66. So finished on 6 under par, finished with 3 birdies in the last 4 holes. So really well done to him. Beat Chris Kim, his teammate from Walton Heath, by 2 shots. The Girls Championship, the Under-16 Girls, was won by Maria Herzberger from Switzerland. Once again, another player from overseas doing really well there. And wow, what a score as well. 9 under par she finished. So well done. She beat Chloe Tabard by 2 shots. And the Under-14s was won by Emily Peaford. Lots of competitions been taking place in recent weeks, so I'll just list a few of them. It would take too long to go through all the results, but basically the likes of British Junior Golf Tour, Northern Junior Golf Tour, the Clutch Junior Golf Tour, which I know you're very close to, Shires Junior Golf Tour up in Scotland, Stephen Gallagher, Paul Laurie, Junior Golf Scotland, Junior Tour Scotland. They've all been having events as well over in Ireland, Irish Junior Open, Irish Kids Junior Tour, Junior European Open, European Junior Tour, the list goes on really. Tommy Fleetwood, Wee Wonders, Schools Golf, US Kids, and also Justin Rose, the Daily Telegraph. That's been ongoing throughout the year, so we're getting closer now, whereby there's going to be a grand final for that, and I think that takes place over in Portugal. So good luck to anyone who's playing in junior events over the coming weeks. We've only got a few weeks left, obviously. A couple of weeks left now until the end of the summer holidays.
Yeah, counting down the days, actually. A week on Monday.
Yes.
A lot of them go back. So
yeah. Absolutely. So, now, I know you got some news as well of a junior the Eurovat.
Yes, a tour you didn't mention, Steve, and I'll forgive you because it's a brand new one as well. As you know, I'm involved in the Clutch, but I'm also involved in the 2020 Pro Tour, which has been going for about 3 years now. It is and claimed to be the first ever mixed gender pro tournament when it first started in 2020. Now it has its own junior category as well. And on Sunday, I was at Northcliffe Golf Club for the Hazard Junior Golf Classic. It wasn't a huge field. I think there was the players playing were Evie Cotsworth, Charlie Evans, Marley Dodds, Olivia Brodie, James Robertson, Benjamin Mear, Casper Frey, Callum Spencer, Zach Hemlin, Ethan Batty, Archie Boonwood, Jowett. They were playing, but it was a wonderful experience for them. Have you ever played Northcliffe or ever been there, by the way? Oh, my word, what a track that is. The opening shot over the valley, and in that valley is the 18th. It's unbelievable. I mean, literally, I've never seen anything like it. Now, I went for a little wander, as I usually do at these events, and went up to catch up with some of the juniors and had a chat with one of the groups and a couple of the lads. And one boy in particular caught my attention with what he had to say. Listen to this.
Right, first hole done. How are we feeling? Bit of a nerve settler, right?
Yeah, it is, especially when there's loads of people on the tee like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's really good. It's my home course, so I'm hoping for a good score today. So, yeah.
What's the ambition for you then going forward? You're clearly a very, very good player. Are you looking to go all the way?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've only been playing for a year at the moment, and I started off last year 34, and now I've come down to 8. So
in 1 year,
yeah,
you've gone from 34 to 8.
Yeah, I mean,
I need some lessons.
I mean, it just shows, practice. If I can do that on the first hole, yeah. So, yeah, practice, and then.
Incredible. Well, look, we'll catch up, no doubt, at some point. Go catch up with your playmates and play well. It's great to hear. Lovely story.
34 to 8.
Does it make you? I'm sorry, I'm jealous already. I mean, that's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, that should take a lifetime to get down from 34 to 8. So to do it within 12 months, I mean, he must play some golf and must play some quality golf. So well done to him. What kind of scores were they coming in with then?
Yeah, I mean, they weren't too bad. I think the score that won it was, it was 11 over, I think, total. So, which I don't think is too bad. I mean, with this as well, Northcliffe is quite a difficult track as well. It undulates quite a bit. It's not the longest, but you've got to have course knowledge. And if you don't have course knowledge, you're in big trouble. For example, if you open a tee shot, it's a short par 4. It's 284 yards. You can almost make it. But you have to cut some trees to make it. And if you don't know where you're going, you're in big trouble. So it was the experience for the kids, and it was something that 2020 Pro Tour have never done before. But I think they're going to keep it going as well, because there are plenty of tours. I was chatting to my cameraman about it, and he said, "I don't need like a Northern Junior Golf Tour." And I'm like, there is a Northern Junior Golf Tour, so they get plenty of opportunities. But now there's another one coming in, and this kind of, if we're done with the news, I suppose kind of leads us into what I wanted to talk about really today as well, because we're seeing more and more opportunities now coming in for junior golfers that weren't there before. Clutch never started out with a junior category. Now it has one. 2020 didn't start out junior category. Now it has one. There's so many of these that are starting to breed in, and I just wonder, is this an influence from the top? Faldo started as a legacy, wasn't it really? It was to create a legacy, and it's done that. And we want it to continue to doing that. Now more people seem to be wanting to create that legacy in longer term. Is this a thing that we're going to see more of? And if it is, good. And has that been influenced by the top? I think it has. Yeah.
So let's look at it then. Let's delve into a little bit of what has happened then. So for those who are new to golf and new to what's been happening over the last few months or so, just try.
Where have you been?
Yeah, well, I mean, good luck trying to sum this up. But basically, just try and sum this up in less than 1,000 words of what has happened over the last few months or so with Live Golf. What is Live Golf with the USPGA, with the DP World Tour? What has happened then? Just try and explain it to me.
Yeah, okay. In a nutshell, PGA Tour have pretty much owned golf forever. All right, they don't officially, but pretty much PGA Tour. If you make it on the PGA Tour, you've made it. It's like get to the Premier League in football or representing England at the World Cup. It's the place to play your golf. European Tour, of course, is been close to being on a par, but it's never really been quite on a par. Maybe in the sort of 70s, 80s, it was there, but not now. Now, this new rival tour's coming called Live Golf, and there's been other rival tours before, by the way, and quite ironically, the PGA Tour was a rival tour as well. It broke away. It was a breakaway from the original PGA when it first got started. So, make of that what you will. But Live Golf came in, chucked a load of money, wasn't sanctioned by the PGA Tour, and has basically bought players to come over to play from the PGA Tour. Now, Live Golf did want to talk to the PGA about sorting out calendars so they don't clash. They said no. PGA Tour banned all the players from going over. Live Golf players have said that's not fair. You can't do that. What it's done is created this massive storm of power. It's a power struggle at the minute. I see both sides of the story from this, by the way. I'm a fan of all of it. I know I've been inside the Live camp, so I am a fan of Live, but I'm also a fan of the PGA Tour as well because of the history. And what we've got at the minute is you've got one huge power that's got all the heritage and the history. You've got a new power that's got all the money. And then, unfortunately, you've got the European Tour, which has now gone into bed with the PGA Tour because they've always had a relationship. But what they've done by going into bed with them have essentially accepted that they're the second tier, which we've always known they have been for quite a while, but now it's almost confirmed, if you know what I mean. And you've almost got the power, I see it, with Live Golf here, PGA Tour here, and it's a power struggle that is amazing for people outside of golf, or it's amazing for people inside of golf watching. But what you tend to find is when you talk to a lot of golfers, they either sit with the PGA or they sit with Live Golf, and it's creating a divide. Which is going to have to be sorted out, and it will be sorted out because nobody owns the sport. That's what we need to remember. Nobody owns the sport, and competition will always come in. It's just how we deal with that competition and the big question is how it affects things moving further down the food chain, because it's all right chucking this money, saying we've got this money. It's all right Live Golf coming in going, right, we're going to chuck $1 billion into this. That's great. But if that $1 billion doesn't work its way down into the junior ranks and into the ladies ranks as well, then what is it actually doing other than just making the rich even richer? What opportunities is it actually creating? PGA Tour, you can't argue, it's created plenty of opportunities over the years and will continue as well. It's not going to go away, by the way. They're two monsters that are just, we don't want them to keep fighting. We want something to get sorted out with them. It's almost like we've got a Premier League in England, and it would be like somebody outside of the FA, the Premier League, coming in going, I want to create my own football league in England, and paying Man City to come over and play in their league instead of playing in the Premier League. That's essentially what is happening at the minute, and it's working. But the concern is what happens next, and that's what I'm a little bit concerned about, because for me, the big loser in all of this is unfortunately the DP World Tour, the European Tour, as you want to call it. And the reason I say that is because one of the big things about playing on the PGA Tour, of course, in the European Tour and Challenge Tour, etc., is your world ranking points. So you get world ranking points, which means you qualify for the majors, you qualify for Ryder Cup, President's Cup, etc., etc. You qualify for the big tournaments. Live Golf at the minute do not have any world rankings. So as we got a little bit further down with all of this, and the first event had happened at Centurion Club, a lot of the European Tour players a lot of the players who've gone over to Live and were banned by the PGA Tour said, fine, we'll go play on the European Tour and get our ranking points that way. Then the European Tour said, well, you can't play our big events, you can only play our little events. So then they've come out and said, well, you can't do that. So the European Tour's hand was forced essentially to say, well, we're going to have to go into bed with the PGA Tour. So they've done that. But essentially, if you now win the European Tour, top 5 get a PGA Tour card. So you're accepting you're a feeder series.
I think it's not 10. I think it's actually the top 10. I think
10. Sorry, 10. Yeah.
Yeah,
but
which is even more so. So even more players are going to be going, aren't there?
Well, what we're saying is essentially it's, if you put it to football terms, those understand the football pyramid. You've got Premier League, then the second division is the Championship, then the third division is League One. The European Tours become the official championship. You know, it's the second division of football and that of golf. And that's a concern for me, because what's an even bigger concern for me now is that the Asia Tour has now come over and said to all the LIV players, come play on our tour if you want your world ranking points. Now, all those LIV players, they are big star names as well. You know, your likes of Brooke Koepka, your Dustin Johnsons, your Patrick Reeds. They're not sort of, when it first started, everybody was like, oh, LIV Golf, we're just signing up all the old has-beens, you know, all the European Tour old has-beens, you know, which is very harsh, by the way, because there's still a lot of playing Lee Westwood and Ian Poulter and all these players. But then when they got Mickelson, and then they got DJ, and then they got Koepka, and all of a sudden it's like, well, hang on, that top 20, they're cutting a knife right through it. And it's become a problem, because these players now, if they want to play Ryder Cups and President's Cup, and they want to play the Masters, which they still all do, they're going to go play on the Asia Tour. Now that depletes the European Tour even further from anything. And my concern, certainly for golf in England, is we're quite fortunate we get some decent tournaments over here. We've got the Open, of course. We've got the BMW PGA. We've got the British Masters. We have another European tour event, the Kazoo Classic or whatever it is. You know, there's a lot of high-profile golf going on over here. But I'm worried we're going to get to the point where we're not going to have the fields. And so we're not inspiring, like the British Masters. Who's going to turn up for that, you know, to playing that, really? You know, okay, the BMW PGA, it is a Rolex Series event, so it's quite a big one, but the Americans don't come over for that anyway. And they've got enough to deal with on the PGA Tour. And one of my biggest bugbears is suddenly the PGA Tour have now suddenly found all this money from nowhere. And
this is today. They've just announced this today, haven't they? A new format whereby, you know, ridiculous amounts of money that they're going to be pumping in, basically, for the top players again.
So for the top players,
yes,
it's exactly the same as LIV. Now I've got it here. The PGA Tour is increasing prize money at 12 events to match those of LIV Golf. I mean, that means it's an average purse of $20 million, £16.9 million. Well, the PGA Tour is a not-for-profit organisation. All right, they do a lot of charity work as well. So where's all this money suddenly been? Do you know what I mean? If you can suddenly raise your prize pots at 12 events to 16.9 million, this money's clearly there. So who's suffering from this then? Because it doesn't come from nothing. If you're a not-for-profit organisation, the money you bring in, you reinvest somewhere, you know, for the good of the people. So my concern is where is this money? And my problem with LIV as well is, and I could be wrong, but my only issue with LIV right now is that there doesn't seem to be any signs or noises of what they are going to do to create categories to get people into the game as well. You know? Yeah,
and that's one of the issues, isn't it? It's a closed shop at the moment, in the sense of you sign up and you're there for, you know, I think is it 14 events? I think they've got planned for next year. I think how many they've
yeah, I mean, a lot of them are signing sort of 3 or 4 year contracts. You know, so you know we'll see, or based on tournaments, etc., etc. But you know, I think that will develop. My concern is the rich are just getting richer.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's a few issues then we're going to talk about. We are obviously a junior golf podcast, so we need to obviously try and angle it on the impacts that it's going to have for juniors. Then, so let's go into a few things here then. So the LIV Golf, some of the events that they've had, they've attracted some of the top amateurs, haven't they? Mm-hmm. So they've had invites which have gone out. I think did they invite the amateur champion, the US amateur champion? So generally speaking, that, as we've seen with someone like Lottie or the boys' side of it, the men's side of it with the amateur, that tends to be a very young golfer who wins that. So suddenly you're having juniors who are being attracted to go and play in these events, as opposed to, as you mentioned there, the older professionals. So they're not stupid. They're trying to target some of the younger players as well and giving them an incentive to come along as well. And if you're turning to the amateur champion, let's say the amateur champion, for argument's sake, is 18, 19 years old, and you say to him, right, you turn professional and we'll give you 200 grand for your first event without having to make a cut, where's the incentive then to say no? you'd be pretty stupid not to, wouldn't you?
Well, I guess the concern with this, they signed up the number 2 ranked amateur in the world, and he played at the last event at Portland, I think, wherever it was. And of course, the argument at the minute is because he's an amateur and not a professional, it shouldn't affect his PGA Tour. If he does want to go play on the PGA Tour, he should be able to. That's not going to be the case, though. Do you know what I mean? My concern with all of this is having a rival league is good, and it should be that way. You should be allowed to have a rival league. No issue with that. My concern is what route do the juniors take? And at the minute, the PGA Tour and LIV are almost making it harder for people to make the decision of where to go. Let's say you are a fantastic 18-year-old player right now. You get an offer from LIV, but let's say you're thinking of turning pro in a couple of months, and you get an offer from LIV, and they say you can come, but you've got to turn pro before you come. We're going to give you $2 million signing on fee. We want you to play. We'll give you a contract for 28 tournaments for 2 years, let's say, and out of that you're going to earn another $2 million at worst. At worst. But by doing that, you're going to buy yourself from the PGA Tour indefinitely. You're like that's a barrier. That's a real barrier and a real thing, because you might not make it on the PGA Tour anyway. You might turn pro and you still got to go through the Corn Ferry Tour, and you've got to do this, you've got to do that. It's going to cost you a damn sight a lot of money to try and get there. It doesn't matter how good you are. It's because they're all going to cost you money to get there. And you don't make anything. You don't make a bean until you make it to the PGA Tour. We hear stories all the time, don't we? And this is the issue that juniors are faced with as well. Finances are a big, big problem. To make it to the top level of golf costs a lot of money. And unless you get incredibly lucky and you get Titleist or TaylorMade or somebody like that to come in and say, we'll pay all your entrance fees and we'll fly you over there and we'll do this, which is a shot in the dark, it's a problem. So when somebody like LIV Golf comes in and says it's £2 million, you're probably going to take it, aren't you?
But also the situation with LIV is that at the end of the day, they've pumped a lot of money in, but they're not stupid. They're still businessmen. They're still out there basically to make money. And with the greatest respect to the young players, the amateurs, the ones who are the up and coming ones, they're not as attractive as your top players. So therefore, there's only so many places that they can possibly give to those young up and coming players. So it'll still be, let's be honest here, for probably 5-10 years, it will still be just for those top players. So going back to the initial point that you were making, is the fact that how do they progress to that level? Because it's going to be difficult for them to get onto a European, or the DP World Tour, the European Tour, to pick up the ranking points, to then get onto the US Tour, to the PGA Tour, to then be attracted to the LIV Tour. I mean, it's almost now they have to go through 3 tiers. You're talking, you use the football analogy, it's someone coming at League One level, isn't it? And that's and it's not easy to get into the European Tour for a start. So
what it's like, Steve, and it's really difficult, is because to get onto the LIV Tour, and LIV survives on big names. All right, we could all create an amateur tour, or we could all create a golf tour that we give opportunities to players for, etc., etc. You need a backer and somebody to put some money in. But in order for LIV to work, because it wants the big names, they've got to put their hand in the pocket. But they need the big names to already be there. The only way they can already be there, or the only way you can become a big name, is by winning on the PGA Tour. So essentially, LIV Golf is trying to use the PGA Tour as a feeder, but it needs the PGA Tour. It sounds crazy. LIV Golf needs the PGA Tour to still be up here. Do you know what I mean? And this is the perception that people have. People think LIV Golf are trying to kill PGA. They're not. LIV Golf need the PGA Tour to still be a top place to play. So when the players get to that top level, they can go, thank you. And the ones who they don't want anymore, who are down here, they can go, there you go. It's almost like, to go back to football, it's almost like when we had the European Super League, the breakaway.
I was just thinking exactly the same thing.
Yeah. It is exactly the same thing.
And that got smashed, and that got knocked on the head within a matter of 3 or 4 days, didn't it? So why didn't this in golf then? How's the difference? Why didn't it?
Hugely different, and there's a number of reasons for it. Number one reason is the investment in the clubs that come from overseas as well. For example, Manchester United is worth Chelsea just sold for 3 billion, didn't it? So Chelsea's worth 3 billion, let's say.
So probably similar.
So mainly probably more, to be fair. I know they're having their troubles, and we all like to have a laugh at them, and especially being a Leeds fan, I love to have a laugh. But can't argue they're a very popular club. So let's say they're worth 4 billion or 5 billion. Let's say that's very different to what Brooks Koepka is worth. Very, very different indeed. Also, inside of Manchester United is we got playing staff, so there's at least 22 of those. Then you've got academies, then you've got the management staff, then you've got the infrastructure, you've got the facilities that they own, the properties that they own as well. All of these things have to go in. Whereas with a golfer, it's an individual. Okay, it might be his caddy, it might be his physio, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, the buck stops with them. With a football club, you're an employee of the football club. So you sign for Manchester United, you sign a contract, you work for Manchester United. All right, that's how it works. As a golfer, you are an independent contractor. So you can essentially go do what you want within reason. Now, Cristiano Ronaldo is a Manchester United player. He couldn't say, I'm going to go play for Chelsea next weekend, and then I'm going to go play for Leeds, and then I'm going to go do this, and then come back, because Man United would be like, no, you can't do that. Then there's the fan base side of things as well. And you do have to factor that in as well. Tiger Woods has got a lot of fans around the world, an awful lot of fans around the world, but he's not answerable to any of them because they don't invest necessarily in him. They might invest in his brand, but that's a personal choice. A football club is very different. There's a more of an emotional bond with that. The fans have a lot more say, and quite often in a lot of clubs, the fans own a percentage of the shares as well. So they have to have a say. There's more people who has a say. There's a board of directors who has a say in a football club. Quite often, a percentage of that is fans, whereas in a player, you can't do anything. They can do whatever they want.
It's a better example of a sport then, which would be similar to golf and the kind of changes that they go through. Would that perhaps be cricket with the Indian Premier League? Would that be something similar, whereby they've gone down to the stage whereby they are basically now hiring individuals and paying them vast amounts of money to play in their teams, kind of thing? And effectively, obviously, Liv has got the team element as well, although that's a moot point to say it's actually relevant. But you know what I'm saying?
I'll tell you, and it's a very relevant point actually, because the IPL is very, very similar. They're guns for hire, basically. But it's a one tournament a year, and everybody knows it's coming up. The difference between that as well is cricket doesn't pay as well as golf pays or football pays. So when the IPL started to come in and say to like the ECB give out contracts to England players, that's how it works. So you want Joss Butler, we're going to give you a contract. Therefore, you have to be available for these games, for these dates. Now, they don't fall in around the IPL anymore because they've all worked together, right? Cricket's governing bodies have got together and realised that actually for the good of the game, we need the IPL because it brings in a hell of a lot of money, all right? So we need to make sure we're not having international matches around the IPL that these players who they're going to be bidding for are going to be contracted to go play. So this is where it worked, because you've got people at the top of the game who, rather than fight each other, got together and thought, okay, let's try and make this work because something is coming. And if we don't work together on it, it could get quite nasty. And that's exactly the opposite of what's happened in golf. Rather than working together, it's just got nasty and it's caused all sorts of problems.
There's two words which when I think of what's going on, and it's real big two words to use, but it's civil war, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. They're harming each other right now. Well, actually, I'm going to say it. I don't think Live Golf are, because they're not trying to stop. As I said before, I'm not going to sit in either camp. I'm a fan of both. But Live Golf have come out from the start wanting to talk to the PGA Tour. They wanted to talk to them. And my personal opinion is PGA Tour got a bit, we're golf, screw you. We're so big, we'll just sit on you and you'll just disappear within 6 months. And then what's happened is it's got bigger and bigger, and they've thought, oh no. And I don't like the things that they're now bringing in, because I personally feel the investment will be taken away from the pathway to get to the top. I don't think it's the right thing to do. I don't know where this money is suddenly coming from. It clearly was always there then. If you're suddenly able to generate this money from nowhere and suddenly be able to pick your prize pots up, and suddenly be able to create all this new stuff and do this. And the PGA Tour have just sanctioned this new partnership with Rory McIlroy and Tiger Woods. We're going to have Monday night golf coming up as well, which is stadium-style golf, 3 versus 3 team competition, 18 players in total, 2 hours each, and it involves a boatload of cash, and that is the official quote.
Okay, right. Just there's another word which comes into my head as well, and that's greed. And it's through. I mean, you whether you're on the live side or whether you're on the PGA side or whatever, but there's greed on both sides, because they're both after the big money, the big players. They both want to be the top dog. So when it comes down to it, they both want to be main tour.
Yeah. And
like I say, I use the word civil war because at the moment it's going to be going to court, isn't it? And there's going to be some kind of a court decision to try and find out whether they are basically working as a monopoly, and in which case then, if that is proven, then that's going to end. In which case then the only solution I can see is that Liv will win because they've got more money. Okay, that's perhaps before what's happened today, in the sense that they tried to come back with some kind of counter offer, but there doesn't seem any. It makes me feel sad when I see how much greed there is in the game. And is it? Can I put this down to just being? It's because professional. I use the word professional there because professional golf is about being paid for the game, kind of thing. So I'll give you an example, right? So I helped run some junior events. I ran a junior open in my home county, and to get more players to play in my event, I contacted all the other clubs in the county who held a junior open, and I said, I'll try and get players to play in your event if you try and get players to play in my event. So we worked together. Yeah. There was no greed involved. All of us could quite easily have gone, I would prefer to have my event and get as many players in my event, so my event is the best. On the back of that, all of the junior opens in the county had about 50 plus players, as opposed to last year when they were getting about 30, 35, because we all worked together without any greed, without any animosity. It was a case of let's try and do something for the juniors. So this is about junior golf, to try and get more players playing together. So we work together, amateur organisations, right? And I have to be careful where I go on this, but there is a golf tour out there who, you've seen my website, you've seen what I do with the website, Progress Junior Golf. It has all the junior fixtures on there, so there's no priority, there's no favoritism, there's no you should go to this, you shouldn't go to this one. They're all on there. There is a tour who have seen my event, my website, my events, and they have banned me on Twitter.
What?
And that is a professional organising that tour, a professional golfer. And I just think, is it the professional mentality of they saw rivalry and thought, block them, stop them? And that's what the PGA Tour has done to another tour. They've seen rivalry, they've gone, right, the way to stop it is cancel culture, stop them. Is it just a professional thing within golf?
No, I think it's a business thing, to be honest, Steve. And by the way, I don't blame the PGA Tour for trying to squash this on the outset, because any business would do the same. You got somebody, a rival who moves into, if you're the only window cleaner in the area and then suddenly another local window cleaner comes on, you're going to be a bit like, oh, hang on, this is my turf. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've done this area for years. This is don't be pinching my clients. Do you know what I mean? The thing with it is, if the PGA Tour are a not-for-profit organisation, then they shouldn't be so concerned about what's going on at the minute. And as I've said before, the problem they've got is what I think, if they've got a real problem with it, I think a solution would be, this is a solution that I would come up with for them, is give Live Golf world ranking points. Because if they get world ranking points, then quite frankly, all the players can do 2 fingers to the PGA Tour. Then fine, we won't play. We just won't play. Oh, but we will turn up for your majors, by the way. And we will turn up to your Ryder Cup. Problem with that is, can you imagine the dressing room for the Ryder Cup if you've got DJ and all of those? You've got the Live Rebels in there, as they're called, which is, come on, let's grow up a bit. and then you've got the PGA Tour boys. You know, could you imagine like Dustin Johnson and
you'd almost have 4 teams.
You imagine Patrick Reed against Rory McIlroy. You know, could you imagine that? Like, I bet. Then could you imagine Sergio Garcia and McIlroy sharing a dressing room together? Sergio, who, as we know, can't wait to get out of the PGA Tour, can't stand it. McIlroy, everybody's selfish, they're greedy, blah, blah, blah. You imagine that. It would just, it's got to be sorted. Something's got to be done. What I would do is I think the players should look at this and get rid of all this heritage nonsense, all right? Because a lot of players make a good point at the end of the day. Why shouldn't they get paid? I mean, like, I can't think of any sport. All I ever hear is the argument of, oh, but the PGA Tour, it has a cut. You know, if you don't make the cut, you don't get paid and all this sort of stuff. Well, I don't see that in any other sport. I don't see if we watch a football match and Harry Maguire has a bad game, we turn around and go, sorry, Harry, you know, you didn't really play that well today, so we're just not going to pay you. Do you know what I mean? Could you imagine that? It would be like, no, I think you are paying me. You know, I think you are paying me. It's the same in cricket. They get contracts, so they get paid. You know, if they get injured, they get paid. You know, golf, that's why they're independent contractors. So if a golfer gets injured and misses a tournament, guess what? PGA Tour doesn't have to pay him anything. Do you know what I mean? If a golfer gets injured, if Sergio Garcia gets injured, right?
Will Zakaris out of the final event and missed out on 30 million, I think, or something like that, just because he's injured. They picked the wrong week to be injured, basically. Yeah,
he's not going to get any compensation. I mean, he's still going to come 30th, so he's still going to bank $500,000, but it should have been probably at the moment. Yeah, probably at worst, if it finished where he was due to start, it'd been $4.5 million. You know, so it's cost him, that injury's cost him $4 million essentially. But if he takes a live golf contract for 14 tournaments and he gets injured and can't play in one, well, great, that just rolls over to the next tournament. You know, it goes over to the 15th tournament that he should play. You know, he should have played one, so it'll just carry on for an extra one contract. It's just unbelievable, because what I would do if I was a PGA Tour, I'd be like, okay, look, you need us. All right, so let's get that straight. You need us more than we need you, because we've operated for 100 years without you. So we don't need you, but you're here. And we can't fight you financially. We can't fight you. So what we'll do is you can talk to our players. All right, if this is the contract, by the way, if the contract states the PGA Tour owns those players, which I don't think it does, and this is part of the problem, then you can make the player an offer, and then you pay as a transfer fee. But that money, transfer fee wise, has got to go into the junior level, so it's got to go into growing the game further down, providing facilities for more people, make it more accessible to get into golf, push it into the clubs to get more people into golf. Do you know what I mean? Same for the European Tour, transfer fees, and then push that money into golf clubs to grow the game.
And how much, okay, so let's look at other sports then and look at comparisons here then. How much money do you think from a Premier League level gets into junior football? How much money in IPL cricket gets to junior cricket? How much, I don't know, pick other sports, basketball in America, how much of that do you think gets to junior level basketball?
Well, I know for a fact that pretty much every Premier League football team has its own junior academies. I know they have scouts. I know they do a damn sight more for golf at junior level, for football, junior football, because they all have junior pathways to get to the top. And I don't know what it is for the PGA Tour, to be honest. I don't know. And I'm open to being told, because I don't know. I don't know how much money the PGA Tour put into junior golf. I don't know if they give a bursary or whatever to multiple golf clubs or what they do. But I know for a fact that
the Live Golf they've used the saying, and a lot of the players, when they've done their tweets and things like that, when they've come out with them, when they've signed, they've said, I've signed to grow the game. So they've used that statement on a lot of occasions. What is growing the game? If it's growing the game at the top level, which it is for them, it's growing their pay packet. What about the rest of golf? Is it growing the game of the rest of golf?
That's it. I don't know. And certain people.
Well, they've used this statement. They keep on using this statement, so they must have some kind of a plan whereby they've said. So I haven't seen any evidence or anything from them to say this is how we are growing the game.
No, and that's what I mean. And if it's not going to come from Live, then maybe the PGA Tour can utilise Live some way to do that. I don't know. We need people like Sir Nick, who's created Faldo Series, and Robert Rock and all these people to but they've had to put their own money in. They've had some backing, they've had help, of course, and they've been sanctioned by the RNA and people like that. But I feel that at the minute there's two massive heads at the top of the game biting with each other, and the concern is that everything else gets forgotten about, and it's come down to greed. I'll tell you, one of the reasons we talk about cricket is because everybody got together and found a solution, and now cricket is arguably in its strongest position it's been in.
And to be fair,
forever.
cricket they had similar issues when it first came about. If you remember when Kevin Peterson, he had lots of rows, shall we say? I mean, he picks rows with anyone, doesn't he? But during his playing days with the England Cricket Board, he basically said, "I want to go and play in these events," and the England Cricket Board said, "No, you can't." And eventually, they came to some kind of a solution, not just for him, but for other players as well, whereby they could. So there was a way around it, kind of thing. So, look, I'm wary of the fact that we're obviously running out of time here. There is one subject we do want to touch on within this, and which was briefly mentioned right at the start. What about women's golf? Where does this come into it?
Well, this was leading me into women's golf, actually, talking about that, because at the top in cricket, they eventually got together and sorted it out. I was with Ellie Gibbons the other day, Ladies European Tour star, on Sunday. She won the shootout, by the way, the pro shootout, which was quite a laugh. I was talking to her about this exact subject, actually, and we were chatting away. And because, we were talking about PGA, so she said, "Oh, yeah, it's really tight." She plays on the Ladies European Tour. And she said, "Ian," she goes, "I could do whatever I want on the Ladies European Tour. I'm not, they can't, there could be a Ladies European Tour event in net on right now, and I could play 2020 Pro Tour. I could do whatever I want. And I'm not contracted to anything." So she's a member of the Ladies European Tour. She plays on the Ladies European Tour. But if Live Golf said to her, "Come play with us," she'd go play Live Golf and then come back and play on the Ladies European Tour, and they wouldn't stop her. So that's how the Ladies European Tour do it, and I think I don't know what the LPGA would do. The next step for me is, are Liv going to move into women's golf? Maybe they should sort of test the water. I've often thought this. I thought shotgun starts in the UK, shotgun start 2:15 start, that they've got the golf club for the entire day, or for the entire few days. So why not have the women go off first, or the men go off first, or whatever, and get 8 hours of golf in a day, Now
there's let's stay with the women's side of it and girls' side of it, if you like. Is one of the big controversies, obviously, is the Saudi influence. Now, I know that the Saudis obviously have sponsored parts of the Ladies European Tour and also the LPGA Tour events as well.
In a big way. Yeah.
In a big way. A big way in comparison to the amount of money which does go into those tours, absolutely. I don't know what the percentage is of the amount of money, but it's a much higher percentage.
Well, Aramco, the big sponsor, they're Saudi backed, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely, and they got some of the big names to come and play in some of their events, including the one at Centurion the week before the live event. You see, so absolutely. But my point with that is the fact that obviously the Saudis have a questionable human rights record, shall we say, and in particular with women. So is that something whereby the ladies' game really wants to get into? Is that something let's stay with the junior angle? Is this something we should be promoting for juniors? Is this something which we want to promote? It's been sports washing has been a word which has been used a lot to describe what's going on, kind of thing. It's a massive subject which probably shouldn't be covered in the junior podcast. But let's just briefly talk about how that can is that something which should be associated with juniors? Is it something we should keep away from?
Well, I understand your point, because it could be damaging to the junior game, couldn't it, to be associated with something like that? I think it's an education thing, and I think the only way to learn and the only way to move forward is for countries like Saudi Arabia to open the doors. I think the issue we've got with it is it still goes on in Saudi Arabia, doesn't it? The human rights issues that we hear, it's not like the British Empire's not exactly squeaky clean, is it? No country is exactly squeaky clean. But that's all tends to be in the past now. We've learned lessons and we've moved on to a respectable society across the world, usually. I think the issue that we have with Saudi Arabia is that a lot of the human rights issues we hear about are still current to this day. That's the problem, isn't it? My personal view on this whole thing is the simple fact, Steve, and this is going to sound horrible and maybe a bit greedy, the only way to grow any sport is to just, you need money, you need finance in it, you need to get it in. And golf and all sport has been around for a long time. It's had opportunities and it still has opportunities. The only way to teach these people how to do things properly is to bring influence in. So if we get in women from the Ladies European Tour and the LPGA to go over and they're happy to do it and they're playing in these events, then surely that can only be a good thing, that the Saudi Arabians local are seeing this type of thing and thinking, well, actually, this is the norm. This is how it's done in the Western world. This is how it's done in America. This is how it's done in Europe. This is how they do it in Australia. This is, maybe this is a better way of doing things going forward for the long term. Yes, sport washing. People aren't stupid. You can't just hide away from these days. I mean, who owns Newcastle United? Still own Newcastle United, don't they? There was a bit of furore when it first started, but as soon as the money started coming in, everybody conveniently forgotten, haven't they? As soon as Newcastle start winning games, then all of a sudden it's, I don't know where the money comes from. I'm not too fussed. We want to grow the game, and this podcast is about junior golf, and it's about growing the junior golf game. And we need to find ways in which we can do that. And you're never going to have as much money in it as comes down from the top. The whole point of this to talk about was what is going at the top. Is it going to affect what's going further down? And I think it is at the minute. And I think it's having a big, big problem with it, because so much money is, my concern is that the money that is trickling down is being taken away a little bit to go back up to the top again. And that's what I'm concerned about, is, are we going to see fewer opportunities now for the youngsters coming through for the next 5 or 10 years? Is it going to be even harder to get through, even though there's an extra 48 spaces through with Live? And is it only going to become even more accessible for the privilege, which, then have we just gone backwards, is the point of what I'm trying to say. We're at a point now in golf where the rich are getting even richer and richer and richer, and the poorer and the ones who are struggling. Golf is an expensive game to get into. Let's not make no bones about this. It doesn't matter what age you are. If you want to get in it at 5 years old, okay, it's a bit cheaper to get some clubs, but then you've got to get memberships or even just to pay fees. It's expensive. And as you get older, it just gets more and more and more expensive. And if that barrier to entry is getting higher and higher and higher and higher, because there's less money, there's less stepping stones, there's less pathways, there's less grants to get you into the game, then the standard's going to go down long term. And it's only the people who can afford to go in will get it. Whereas this is where other sports, low access sports like football and rugby, where all you really need is a ball, that's why there's such an influx of people, and it's why they're so popular, and it's why football will always be so popular.
And is there anything, we've obviously talked about the professional game and the way that they can impact for junior golf, and this, we were talking about power within the game. Obviously there's an amateur game as well, and that will be where your juniors play in the amateur game now, so they're not professionals as we speak at the moment. Obviously they will be, hopefully, if they get to that stage. The R&A are the ones who run the amateur side of things with help obviously from the national bodies, things like that. Is there anything they can do to try and get some of this money from the professional game, or does it all just go to professional golf and just stay with professional golf? Is there anything which we can get hold of?
Well, I hope so. Look, the R&A is arguably the most respected golf body in the world, I would say, and I would like to think that the R&A will be very close with the PGA Tour, and I would like to think the R&A have got a relationship with Live Golf. Everybody's got to stop fighting this. Everybody's got to stop fighting this. And
But they made some decisions at the Open Championship, didn't they? Which Phil Mickelson wasn't invited to the Champions Dinner, for example. Neither was Greg Norman. So therefore, there was. We can perfectly understand the reasons behind that. So
exactly, they didn't do that to be like, oh, it's because you're Live. They did it because, look, we just don't want to break the peace. It's too soon. And I actually think it was quite a savvy decision, because I think next year might be a different situation. But they looked at that and they thought, there's a chance here that on our turf this could blow up, and it's not really to do with us. So let's just make sure it doesn't blow up on our turf and keep it separate. And I thought it was a very astute decision from those in the R&A, and I sort of take my hat off to that, because they couldn't win in that situation. But what a situation to be in. They were in a lose-lose, whatever they did. But I think they did the right thing by, this is our patch for this Champions Dinner. No one's going to ruin it. So, and the fact that it's the R&A, and like everyone in the end were like, oh, okay, it's the R&A. Do you know what I mean? Like, and this is where I think maybe the R&A could step in, and because they've clearly got a lot of respect and a lot of influence, and rightly so. And maybe we could get some. Look, there's money pouring into the top, and there's money that wasn't there 12 months ago. Do you honestly think that if Live Golf had never come around, that the prize pots would have, for these 12 events, would have suddenly gone up to $20 million? No chance. They might have gone up by an extra $500,000 or something like that, but it wouldn't have gone up by the amount that it's suddenly gone up by, to this astronomical sum that is now level with Live Golf. So
yeah, do we think that the DP Tour, do we think the Challenge Tour, do we think the Ladies European Tour, do we think those pots will increase on the back of this, or do we think that they'll still be the same? Do you think there'll be some kind of in the same way that in football, let's say, in the Championship eventually started money, but then that came from the Premier League, didn't it? The majority of the money which goes to Championship clubs comes from the Premier League ones who get relegated, you see. So that's where.
Well, exactly, and I think the important thing to remember about the Premier League is not the FA. They're completely different bodies, yes. Completely different. So actually, the English Football League is nothing to do with the Premier League as such. It's a pathway, and this is an example of a pathway that they actually got together and said, okay, let's work together then, because the old First Division was the top flight, and then loads of money came in. The Premier League, started, and said, no, we're going to take the top now, basically. Sort of, but we're going to pump loads and loads of money.
It was more the top clubs who dictated that. But I take your point. Yes,
exactly. Yes, yeah. But something had to change. Something had to happen. It happened in football in 1992. It happened in cricket in 2005, whenever 2020 first started. It happens. Golf has got really cozy and comfortable, and it's done well for as long as it's done well for. But there's been numerous attempts to create a second league. This wasn't the first one. There was one about 10 years ago that was quashed by the PGA quite quickly. It was the Asia series, or the Asia 1 series, or something like that. That was quashed pretty quick, wasn't it, by the PGA Tour? This isn't new, by the way. No one's ever had the money or the guts to go toe-to-toe with the PGA Tour. And I think it's important to remember that the PGA Tour do not own golf. That is the thing to remember. They do not own the sport. And my concern now is that because they've placed themselves at the top, they have a responsibility to the sport, and they have a responsibility all the way down, not just at the top. And suddenly, miraculously from nowhere, all of this money, they're a not-for-profit organisation that they've suddenly just managed to find out in the back pocket, oh, here's another $100 million, by the way. You put it down. Who's going to suffer from that? Where should that money have gone? And that it's now not going to go to, because it's going to go to the players who have already got enough money. Rory McIlroy has been coming out saying, just say it's about the money. I've got loads of money. I don't need to worry about that. I've got good living, blah, 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 blah. It's not about the money. It's about the heritage. So why should it influence you then to have more money? Why, to stay? Like, come on. I don't mind the Live Golf players going, because I would go. If somebody slammed that money down in front of me, I'd be off in a shot, But then again, I'm an independent contractor. If I was a team player,
and as far as I know, you don't earn 10, 20 million pounds a year as well, which is obviously what some of them are on already.
If Live Golf said to me, we'll give you 10 grand to come out, I'll go. Yeah. But I think the point being is, but if I was a footballer, for example, let's say, and I knew that if I left my 10 teammates, if I left them, that they're going to get relegated and they're all going to have their wages cut by half, but I've got an opportunity to double my salary, I'd stay, for my team. That's what I would do.
Right, now, obviously, this is a subject which is going to run over the weeks, months, years, and it's one which we're going to obviously have to follow and see how this does affect junior golf and professional golf, amateur golf as an industry, full stop. So we are going to have to wrap up, obviously, on this podcast, though. We have got some big news though to tell you though, and that is the fact that from next week onwards we're going to have a special. It'll be our 18th show, I suppose 18 holes. It's the one really to do. We're going to do an 18th hole show next week. We're going to do it on the Golf Foundation. We're going to have a chat with them. We're going to do it on Golf Foundation and the Young Ambassadors. And then from that podcast onwards, we're going to be joining forces with the Young Ambassadors, and we're going to get them on hopefully on a weekly or each podcast, and we're going to get some input from some of the some of those people out there who are at the heart of junior golf, the actual juniors themselves. So really looking forward to working alongside those. We're going to be covering some big topics within junior golf. We're going to be looking at safety in junior golf. We're going to be looking at rules. We're going to be looking at all sorts of different. One of the subjects we was talking to them a little while ago was sustainability, which would be fascinating to talk about that, and how juniors. We just talk about how professional golf and making sure that it's right for juniors as they grow up. Well, let's make sure that the golf courses are right, to make sure that they are sustainable and things like that for junior golfers for years to come. So some big subjects that which you're going to be covering in the weeks and months ahead. So listening, that'll be next Thursday. I know Ian said that we're on Wednesdays. We're going to be next Thursday. We're going to be doing that one next Thursday. That's it. So the 1st of September, and then from then onwards, we're going to be hopefully every couple of weeks, and we're going to be covering some big subjects. But and no bigger subject today than the big subject, the one which everyone has been talking about, professional game. We tried to put a junior angle on it there and tried to find out some solutions. I think it's probably one of the few podcasts where we really haven't come up with any solutions at the moment, because we just it's just until things are sorted in the courts and it's just going to have to pan out, and we're just going to have to.
I just don't want the junior game to suffer. That's my fear. I fear that the junior game is going to be the short-term sufferer here. Yeah,
let's hope that that's not the case. We'll be doing our bit to try and hope that's not the case. So right, that'll be it then for this podcast. Like I say, next Thursday, 1st of September, we'll be talking with the Golf Foundation and find out exactly what they do for junior golf, and the Young Ambassadors tell you all about what they is, and they're actually looking for some new Young Ambassadors as well. So it'll be interesting to find out exactly how you can get involved or become a Young Ambassador as well. So we'll have more details of that next week. But thanks very much for watching this podcast. This has been Progress Junior Golf with Content Live Golf. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll speak to you soon.
Ciao.